Hello and welcome to the oddschecker Betting Show. This is a Cheltenham Festival preview looking at the Irish angle, sponsored by 888 Sport. I'm your host, George Elek, and today I'm joined by two tipsters, oddschecker's very own Andy Holding, and making his debut on the oddschecker Betting Show, Johnny Ward. And we're also joined by 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty. On this podcast, hear Barry Geraghty's thoughts on why the Irish have been so dominant in recent years at Cheltenham Festival.
He's an amazing trainer, but he's constantly restocking with the best he can get.
Hear which horse Andy has miles clear of the others in the Mayor's Novice on his speed figure ratings.
Look, he's done the kind of numbers over here that suggests he's going to run a hell of a race.
Hear which horse Johnny thinks has to be the value in the top two in the Champion Bumper.
For me, it's a two-horse race. I think there's enough juice in his price. I think he's 15-8 at the moment.
And finally, Johnny and Andy both agree on who must be the bet in the Triumph Hurdle. Yeah, loads to get through on this podcast. Just under 2 weeks until the Cheltenham Festival starts. But before we get your guys' views on some of the Irish challenges, as ever, when we have a debutant on the oddschecker Betting Show, it's time to introduce them, and listeners to Racing Weekly will know all about Johnny Ward, as will people who read plenty of his stuff online and seen his videos before tipping for Racing TV and others. But Johnny, quick introduction as to who you are and how excited are you about the festival coming up in just under 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think my first Cheltenham, it's appropriate Barry Geraghty is here. The first Cheltenham was when Barry hit a 5-timer in 2003, I think. So I went to college and hadn't too many hours of college work, so I started going to the bookies out of pure boredom. Met some of my best mates, and my first Cheltenham, for some reason I decided that I'd really crush on this Barry Geraghty. For anything that he wrote, I'd pick Barry Geraghty. So he had a great year. I'm sure he can rhyme off You'll Never Walk Alone, and obviously Moscow Flyer and Spirit Leader and all the horses that won that year. But yeah, so I guess that was my first challenge. So this must be my 20th thereabouts. And yeah, it's obviously the highlight of the year. I'm a freelance journalist now. I used to work for the Ante-Post, Irish Independent. Right now I work for Racing TV, Irish Independent, a couple of bookmakers, and various other radio outlets as well. And yeah, can't wait for the festival.
Something about students and Barry and the Cheltenham Festival, because I remember, I think it was 2012, I was at uni. And, you know, I love my racing. I'd pore over the form, read every single preview, watch every preview night online and everything else. And one of my housemates who didn't have any interest in Cheltenham at all just punted Barry's rides all week, and he absolutely chopped it off. And I was left just with my hat left at the end of the week. So Barry, you're improving the fortunes, or back in the day, you're improving the fortunes of students quite clearly, both this and that side of the Irish Sea. So bit different Cheltenham week for you now these days, isn't it? How excited are you now? Now we're getting close to the action.
Oh, really excited. And I suppose an argument Shishkin clash at Ascot, that was the first big one for me out of the saddle to watch. And the nervous excitement I had for that. I wasn't sure how this feeling would be. Like, I'm nearly 2 years on from when I finished, I had my last ride. But yeah, I am absolutely buzzing. I can't wait for this. And the clashes, the quality, the strength of the races. I'm really up for it as a spectator.
Andy, looking forward to seeing you there on the Tuesday. A man who never misses a day. How exciting is it? And I think I know the answer to this. I'm feeling it myself, not only to have Cheltenham, but to be back there again after last year, all of us having to watch it from the sofa.
Yeah, hi guys, good to be here. Yeah, it's going to be terrific this season. Even more so, more emphasis on the crowd being there. The fact that we've missed out, a bit like the foot and mouth when we had that. I remember the year after then. I think it was in sort of 2004, 2005 period when the crowds flocked back in, and there was a real jamboree atmosphere the year after. So I think it's going to be similar this season. Of course, we kick off with a great Supreme as well, so that'll get the pulses flowing. As Barry's already said, Johnny, some great clashes throughout the rest of the week. Particularly, when we've got the Irish-English clashes as well. It's not just all about the Irish head-to-heads. There's some good stuff from the UK as well, throwing their cap into the ring. I'm a slightly longer vintage than these two guys, and my first Cheltenham experience was back in the sort of bird's nest sea pigeon era. My dad used to take me to Cheltenham. My first Cheltenham sort of Gold Cup I remember properly, actually sort of going on my own, was Forgive and Forgets, and I haven't missed the Cheltenham Festival day. The only one I've missed in the interim was Desert Orchids Gold Cup. Of all the ones to miss, Probably missed the most historic race in Cheltenham's history. But yeah, I'll be there.
Where did you watch it?
I was actually working in a betting shop at the time. I was a board marker back in the day in a little village close to my old home. So yeah, so from humble beginnings, I've managed to chew on my way onto a podcast with Barry Geraghty. Amazing.
Yeah, that handicap mark has only climbed ever since then. We can be sure of that. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an unbelievable start on that Tuesday. And it's Cheltenham silly season when it's Thursday, the 3rd of March today, 12 days before the start of the festival. And one racing WhatsApp group I'm on, I spent the whole day watching Cigar Hard and on the exchanges, going into favourite at kind of 4.0, back out to 4.5, and everyone poring over whether or not he's going to be running in the Supreme or the Ballymore. Absolute silly season. Would never happen anywhere else. But let's get into the actual crux of the preview here. And both Johnny and Andy have come up with 5 Irish horses to follow over the course of the Cheltenham Festival. But before we do that, I think we should talk about the dominance that the Irish are having at the moment. We have the Presbyterian Cup, of course, which is the battle between Great Britain and the Irish in terms of who train more winners. And last year it was an unprecedented rout. It was 23-5 to the Irish. The year before that, 17-10. Maybe a bit of recency bias in terms of the length of this dominance. The year before that, which was 2019, was 14 apiece. So it's not like this has been going on for too long. It's not like the Ryder Cups of the 70s and 80s where the Europeans didn't get a look in. But we need to look at what is going on here. And when you look at some of the handicap races, we haven't had a winner in the Pertemps from Great Britain since 2015, 2017 for the Fred Winter or the Boodles, 2018 for the Kim Muir as well. But Barry, what's happening? What has been the shift in the sport that has seen the Irish rise to such dominance? What are the key reasons behind this?
For me, it's buying power and replenishing their stock. And Willie Mullins has always been brilliant for that. And that, for me, is why Willie Mullins has been at the top for so long. Obviously, he's an amazing trainer, but he's constantly restocking with the best he can get. And the horses he's buying are on an open market. Fabani bought from France. And then you look at Pied Piper, who Gordon Elliott bought 225,000 guineas from Newmarket. John Gosden, he was there for anyone. So if you're to look at the recent ones, Appreciated, a point-to-point winner, Sir Gerhard, likewise. But the English owners buying and leaving their horses in Ireland, or bringing their horses to Ireland as well, with the prize money level here, racing is more competitive. So it's not as if they're coming here for an easy time. So it must be the prize money, the quality of trainers, you could say, but Nicky Henderson and Paul Nicholls have been top of the game and have won everything to win. So it's not that England lacks the quality, and Dan Skelton and Harry Fry, all these trainers are competitive with the best of England all season. So for me, it's buying power, quality, it's sourcing, and then that feeds right down through the handicap system as well, because the ones that don't make it to the top level are filling the handicaps. The handicaps are so competitive in Ireland, and as well, horses finishing placed. So a horse that was third or fourth in an Irish handicap would probably win an English handicap. I think the English handicapper was overly hard on his horses over the years, and they were getting to elevated marks. Whereas nowadays, he's taken a very different view this season. And Langer Dan is a good example for that. He got £5 for being second in the boys' race last year. He's had one run since. He was beaten 10 lengths in Taunton recently, and he dropped him 3. I looked at Drop the Anchor, who was placed last year, of 146. Sorry, no, of 143. He went to 146, and has been dropped £3. His last 4 runs, he's been beaten 10 lengths, 38 lengths, 4.5 lengths, 28 lengths, and he's still only dropped the same as Langer Dan on one run. So he's taken a different view, and I think the English handicappers are going to be in a far better position this year than the Irish.
Yeah, Johnny, it's interesting because we can talk about buying power, and in terms of the top trainers as well. But when it comes to the handicaps, I went to Fergal O'Brien's yard this time last year for a stable tour, and we spoke to him, and he basically said in his mind, with his runner in the Pertemps, the race was just trying to beat the other Great British horses, because he basically didn't stand a chance against the Irish. So when it comes to the differing handicap marks that these horses are getting this side of next, Barry says that maybe this time around the British horses could be better treated. Do you see that happening?
they could be better treated, but I'm not sure it's going to make that much of a difference, if that makes sense, because the discrepancy in terms of depth in the two countries has been really stark. And you mentioned Fergal O'Brien. I mean, Paul Nicholls, going on the record and saying, "Well, I'm not bringing horse X or horse Y to Cheltenham. Why bother taking on the Irish? I'm going to save him for Aintree." And you kind of do have to look at these things twice and say, "Is this really happening?" The likes of Paul Nicholls almost accepting defeat, and what the handicapper is doing is basically an affront to handicapping, because that's not how you handicap. You don't, as Barry says, rampant inconsistencies in handicapping two different horses and not dropping an Irish horse. Almost the insinuation being like, well, this horse has kind of been laid out for Cheltenham. But you have to have some sympathy for the British handicapping system, because, if he wants to have a dead heat in terms of races, he doesn't want 23.5 and he doesn't want the Irish horse coming over. But there are too many factors for this to be a quick fix for anyone. 23.5 was really, really apocalyptic stuff, I think, for British jumps racing. We should be winning 5 races to 10, maybe, something like that, given our numbers and the size of our country. And essentially now, I did a piece with Ollie Murphy last year. He said it's very, very hard to sell the 300 grand horse, give or take, to an English owner. And as Barry alluded to there, the good horses are effectively staying in Ireland. They're often bought before they've even crossed the line in a point-to-point. I think if you ally that to the fact that Gordon Elliott right now, he has, we'll say, Noel Moran coming in as a big owner, and he's going to have most of his horses with him. Gordon Elliott is ravenous now. He's absolutely ravenous after the year he had to make the best of himself as a trainer, to win a champion trainer's gong, and to do better at Cheltenham. Willie Mullins has been incredible for the last few years. He's also had great support. And Henry de Bromhead, Noel Meade never really kind of conquered Cheltenham like he conquered Irish races. Henry de Bromhead has taken to it like a duck to water in recent seasons. So the three of them are exceptionally good trainers. And just in Britain at the moment, the good horses just aren't really there. And I'm fascinated by the Arkle and the Supreme on day one, because I think that might set the tone for the festival. But British racing will need to have serious soul searching after this festival if it's anything like last year. But this should not be happening in British racing, and I don't think there's a quick fix. So I think day one will be very interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Johnny there mentioned Ollie Murphy, Barry mentioned Harry Fry, and Dan Skelton as well. These are the guys who you would think, if British racing is going to bounce back, you can't be relying on Nicky Henderson and Paul Nicholls to be the ones leading the charge on their own. Why are these younger British trainers unable to have the meteoric rise of those across the Irish Sea? Is it a case of training talent? Is it a case of the horses that they're getting themselves? Is it a problem with owners? Is it a problem with prize money? Where do you think things are going wrong over here?
I think it's a combination of lots of things. I think Barry's probably fundamentally hit the nail on the head with just the stock that the Irish have got. The prize money's better. The structure, I think, of Irish racing is better. Certainly, from a national hunt perspective, there's not so much racing, so I think horses don't get burnt out coming to the festival. A lot of them come there nice and fresh. The Dublin Racing Festival's a lovely time of the year to have your last run. You've got a month and a half to get over that, and then the big guns are not frightened to run against each other as well. Willie Mullins will have 3 and 4 in each race sometimes, and he'll look at his pecking order after it and think, right, okay, that's an Arca horse, but we'll run that in a handicap. And I mean, look what he did with Galopin de Champs last year. He ran it in a Grade 1. It ends up getting a mark of 142, and it's a Grade 1 horse, isn't it? And it's the same with, you could just use Hollow Games as an example this year. He's running 2 Grade 1s, and yet he's got away with 143 in the Martin Pipe. So they clearly have worked out the formula. Obviously, they've got the better horses anyway, but they have got the formula, and it's obviously not anywhere near that standard over here as it stands. I think Dan Skelton's probably taken a little bit of a slightly different approach this season. He recognised that he probably has to have his horses a little bit fresher, and I think he's dodged a few bullets with several horses. He thought, right, your Sham Blues, your Protectorats of this world, your Langadans. He's kept them specifically targeted for Cheltenham rather than run them, in the build-up, and I think that might bear fruit. But largely speaking, I think we've just lost our grip on what's to be expected, and the Irish have very much got it in the ascendancy at the moment.
I think just another point on that, George. I mean, I used to have, I got a great kick out of the likes of Barry having a tricolour kind of raped around his back when we had an Irish winner. Them days are gone. Like I do not want Ireland to be beating Britain 23-5. I don't think it's good for Irish racing at all to be that dominant. We really need strong British racing. I think that point should be made as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but Barry, how do you see it going this time around? If you were to make a 23-5 last year, where do you think it's going to land this time around?
I think it'll be closer, but I do think Ireland will be on top. So it might be 3 or 4 back the other way. But yeah, no, I'd see Ireland on top. But just going back to the point of quality, when I was a kid growing up, and you'd have a horse win a bumper at Navan or Naas or Farius or Punch on the big tracks, the next thing you heard was Nicky Henderson or David Nicholson were overlooking at him. That's not the case anymore. That's how it used to be. And then those days, Ireland were lucky to have 2 or 3 winners at Cheltenham.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems like a pretty sorry state of affairs as a British racing fan. And Johnny, you mentioned there the state of play with the Supreme and the Arkle setting the tone, and I'm guessing a Constitution Hill Edwardstone 1-2 to kick it off would go some way to it wouldn't be revenge, it's too pathetic for that, but it would go some way to easing the pain of last year, especially an owner like Michael Buckley getting off the mark in the Supreme. Talking about big British owners could only be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think even Irish people, there'd be a bit of nostalgia if Nicky Henderson had a horse, who was well-backed favourite, a high horse winning the Supreme, whether that's one or the other or whatever. But in the Buckley colours, as you say, or even in JP's colours, I think even as an Irish person, I certainly wouldn't object to that start at the festival, because we'd be thinking this is how it used to be and this is how it should be. I'm not sure it will be like that, but I think it will kind of set the tone. I really don't know. I'm bluffing a lot here in terms of trying to compare the novices. I think it's really, really hard. So I think the first day is going to be really, really key in that regard.
Well, certainly after Barry gave listeners and viewers of this show the nod about Constitution Hill before his first run, I think a few people listening and watching this will be hoping that Michael Buckley does get off to a flyer. But Barry, before we let you go, just going to ask you for your one nap, the one horse coming over from Ireland, who you think is the one to side with in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, well, Allaho is the obvious one, and he's a sharp price. But I think Sir Gerhard in the Ballymore, I can't see him being beaten.
Do you worry that do you think he'll definitely turn up there? I mean, obviously now you're getting on a no bet or on your bets with most firms. Do check the oddschecker grids for that. But do you reckon Sir Gerhard does take out the Ballymore rather than going for the Supreme?
Well, I'd like to think so. Willie did say he hasn't made his mind up on Dysart Dynamo. So what way he's going to split them, I don't know. For me, Dysart Dynamo is a big threat in the Supreme, but the Supreme is ultra competitive. I don't think this race is as competitive. Ginto, Journey with Me, Stage Star, they aren't the quality of what's in the Supreme. So I think he would be the one for me if he goes here. And if he isn't the one, it's whatever Willie runs.
Final question, Barry. If Sir Gerhard goes to the Supreme, who goes off favourite in the first?
Well, Constitution Hill, I actually had a look at him yesterday. I was over in England, just came back today. I was in England yesterday and I called into Nicky's and visited Constitution Hill, and the stable looks great. He's really happy with him. He's in brilliant form. He worked nicely in Kempton. So at the minute, all is good with Constitution Hill.
Great stuff. Yeah, I've heard some pretty good reports from that Kempton Gallop. Thanks very much to 888 Sport Ambassador Barry Geraghty. Barry, we'll speak to you again next week.
Thanks, George. Cheers, boys.
Time then to get into both Andy and Johnny's picks. 5 picks each, 5 Irish horses to side with at the current prices over at the Cheltenham Festival. And Andy, we've spoken loads about the Supreme before. We've spoken about it on this podcast already. So we're going to move on straight into the second race of the festival on the Tuesday. It is the Arkle. You were pretty firm in your belief 3 or 4 weeks ago that the Irish form in the Arkle was much better than anything we'd seen over here. Prices at the moment have Edwardstone at 9-4, Blue Lord at 7-2, Riviere de Tel 7-2, Horton Color 7-1, Saint Sam 8-1, 14-1 Bar. So Edwardstone really flying the flag for the British, but you're sticking to your guns, and no surprise who you think is the play at this stage.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of Edwardstone. Look, he's done the kind of numbers over here that suggests he's going to run a hell of a race. He was good at Warwick. His jumping's got better as the season's gone on. He stays really well. I think he's kind of like hardened up since getting beaten 1 or 2 handicap hurdles. I think actually being defeated kind of like made a man of him in many respects. And he comes there absolutely flying. He could do with his yard probably picking up a little bit. I think they've gone a little while without a winner, but we're still sort of a week and a half away for the festival, so it could easily change. One negative about Edwardstone in general, he's an 8-year-old, and it tends to go to a younger horse. 5, 6, 7-year-olds have tended to dominate in the last decade. I think Sergeant Europe's the only 8-year-old to win it in recent times. So he's got that little stat to overcome. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Riviere de Tel. Ever since she won first time out over fences and beat Jeremy's Flame, obviously that form has worked out really well. And her time figures have just gone up and up on all her next 4 starts, particularly the run at Navan 3 starts ago. That was the first time that really focused my attention to her and how good she's over the larger obstacles compared to her hurdles performances last season. And even though she's got beaten on her last 2 starts, I've still remained the faith with her, or kept the faith. I thought she didn't do anything wrong against what would have been a very short price favourite for the Arkle in the shape of Fernie Hollow. Of course, if he wouldn't have got injured, I thought she didn't, like I say, jump really well, kept up with him all the way to the line at Leopardstown. And then I fancied her again to beat Blue Lord last time, and I think she probably would have beaten Blue Lord, but for that mistake at the last. She was probably a length and a half clear, and she uncharacteristically dived at the last. Lost a lot of momentum and handed the advantage to Willie Mullins' horse, but she was coming back at the finish. I liked her attitude. Lesser horses would have been completely derailed by that mistake, but she really rolled her sleeves and went hard all the way to the line. And like I say, her time figures are not by a huge amount ahead of Edwardstone, but certainly enough to give me a good deal of confidence that she could beat Edwardstone, the number 1 English horse. And in a race which I don't think probably lacks a huge amount of strength in depth, certainly based on the figures that I've got, I'd expect to certainly beat Blue Lord and maybe get the better of Edwardstone around a track that'll really suit her. So, yeah, big fan of Riviere de Tel.
I'm really interested in for this, Andy, because I find the Arkle one of the tougher races. I think that Leopardstown race could be the key trial in terms of Ante-Post, her and Blue Lord, but I couldn't necessarily be confident she will again. I think she was probably unlucky to even not get the race in the stewards room at Leopardstown. I just couldn't be sure. Did he idle in front at Leopardstown, do you think?
Blue Lord, possibly. I actually felt all the way through the race that Riviere de Tel was going better, jumping better. I thought Blue Lord was a little bit sticky, 1 or 2 fences down the back. I thought he actually did really well just to get to the girth of Riviere de Tel, turning for home. But I said, I think she would have probably won a snug couple of lengths that day had she jumped it cleanly, because she was still full of running as far as I could see. So I was just really surprised after the race that they went 9-2 Riviere de Tel, and I think as short as 5-2, 3-1 Blue Lord. I would have certainly made Gordon Elliott's mare favourite over the 2. But yeah, look, like I say, she's just got a really good profile, and I think she's going to take a bit of beating in the Arkle.
My other question then is Edwardstone. You mentioned the 8-year-old stat. What's a 5-year-old mare in terms of this race? Have many of them tried it?
No, I don't think many 5-year-old mares, but you've got the likes of Flagship Uberalis, Voiper Steadies. I think there's another one as well. Might have been Contraband. I think it was a 5-year-old. But there's been 2 or 3 at least in the last decade to suggest the 5-year-olds can hold their own. But I'd sooner go for a younger horse under 6 and 7 than I would the other way go with an 8-year-old. The 8-year-old stats are a little bit more difficult to overcome.
Johnny mentioned there that you find the Arkle one of the most difficult to solve. I'm not going to move on with that, therefore asking you, putting you on the spot and asking if I was to give you a £10 free bet, you won't be so lucky. Where would your money be going now when you've got Edwardstone at the top end, but then Blue Lord and Riviere de Tel now level in the market at 7-2, Horton Colour 7-1, Saint Sam 8-1, 14's bigger?
Yeah, I'd say Saint Sam probably wants stepping up and trip. I mean, Edwardstone, he's definitely he loves fences, and obviously, he is an 8-year-old, so it's time to kick on with him this year. And it is kind of it's a strange situation now when if there's an English trained favourite of a novice race, you kind of have to look hard into it and say what's going on here. So, in fairness, I don't know if the Irish Challenge is amazing. I think Fernie Hollow would have taken a lot of beating, but Ante-Post, who's also a 5-year-old, he was only marginally bigger in the betting than the 2 horses that finished first and second at Leopardstown. He obviously fell early, which is a small concern, but he actually jumps fine. He's a far bigger price. I could see him being popular on the day. I'm not exactly sure who's going to ride him and what the arrangement will be there, but he obviously ran very well at Cheltenham last year. And I don't know, he's kind of interest for me. I think it's going to be fairly, like, not an amazing renewal of the Arkle, but I think he's going to run very well, presuming he stays up. I'm not a mad fan of Blue Lord, to be honest. I don't think he'll do a lot if he gets up the hill in front necessarily. And I could see the filly definitely kind of reverse the form, but it's a tricky race for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, question for Johnny. Can you remember the last horse to win an Arkle off the back of a fall? You'll probably know this.
Oh wow. Would it be Moscow Flyer?
It was Moscow Flyer.
There we go. Pity Barry's not
Start
still
for
here.
10. Yeah, 2002.
Well,
So
And I'm offended he
can
didn't
be
ask
done.
me, and it was very good as well,
he
because
used
I
to
would
have the
done it.
record of 3 wins and then an unseat or a fall. And you know, I hope, Andy, we can get back to the time where horses like he had a magnetic effect on people, and that was a time when Ireland really didn't have that many winners at Cheltenham, and everyone would bank on him. And it's a different narrative now, but there's something special when a horse like that comes along.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, without that, yeah.
Move on then to the Boodles Fred Winter handicap hurdle, juvenile handicap hurdle, which is I think the last race on the opening day. And we've got 2 selections here for the guys. No, we've got the National Hunt Chase afterwards, the penultimate race. We've got 2 selections. The form lines tie into each other. Johnny, you've put up HMS Seahorse here, who finished behind Andy's selection, the Tide Turns, back in January. The Tide Turns here coming into the race with a mark of 137, HMS Seahorse with a mark of 128. Looking at the market itself, 11-2, the Tide Turns, HMS Seahorse 12-1. We'll give Andy first run here for the Boodles.
Yeah, it's interesting. Me and Johnny are both sort of going in the similar direction here. Obviously, they're both classed at Punchestown 2 runs ago, and I think it might have been both their debut that day. If it wasn't, I apologise for not.
Yeah, I think he'd had a couple of runs at that stage, HMSC or so.
Yeah, I think he might have at least had the one. But yeah, I was really impressed with Tide Turns that day. Sir Mark Prescott horse off the flat. I looked at a strong start, 1.5 mile horse, but he took to it grand the first day, jumped well, stayed on well. That form has worked out really well. We've seen HMS Seahorse, Brazil, of course, who was smuggled into 4th, has subsequently won. And I'm not sure whether he'll run or not off 137, but he certainly stood in the decks anyway. But yeah, that probably was one of the key form lines. But just purely on a time figure perspective, I was waiting for one race to come along and really hit the ball out of the park on the numbers, because by and large the juveniles have been pretty poor bunch on the figures this season, even over here. And then along came that spring juvenile hurdle at Leopardstown on Dublin Race Festival weekend, which is often the case, is the best trial. And Vauban, clocked a number that was sort of up there with the likes of Arcona, who won it many years ago. It was a truly run race. It sorted the wheat from the chaff. Some good horses dropped out the back of the TV, like Ben Segal and several others that were quietly fancied that day. Even Icar Prince couldn't go the gallop, and he's won well since. He was 5th. And I thought the Tide Turns ran really well in 4th. He went down to the last. He was still bang there with a chance. He just couldn't go with the front 2 on the running, but I think they're well above average. Vauban and Phil Dawn should finish in the first 3 respectively in the Triumph Hurdle based on that time figure. And it's a classic Gordon Elliott plot. He obviously thought, well, see, we've got a Triumph Hurdle horse. Coming away from that, he's thinking, well, we're obviously not good enough, right? Well, I need to get one more run into him now. We know we haven't got a Triumph Hurdle, so he ran him in the Red Mills trial the other day at Gowran. Again, in another very strongly run race for the conditions. That T Hooper really did clock a big number that day, quickening away from the field. But the Tide Turns really caught the eye by the way he travelled into that race. But he wasn't overly hard on him, bearing in mind he just needed to run to get another run under his belt to qualify. So it was a case of job done. And he's got a very similar profile. John, I remember, to a horse called Flax and Flare, who finished 5th to our Connor, beating 29 lengths to them many years ago. So it's a tried and trusted formula that Gordon Elliott has used before. And Gordon's got a great record in the Boodles. On the whole, I think he's won it three times in the last 8 years. So he knows what it takes to win. I think he's got the right horse. Certainly, the time figure suggests he's got the right horse. And I'll be amazed if the Tide Turns doesn't run a big race.
The Tide Turns there, the one for Andy. We mentioned HMS Seahorse did have one run before that, run behind the Tide Turns, and finished 50.5 lengths behind Pied Piper, which is form that hasn't worked out too badly, Johnny. And as I say, comes in here with a mark of 128.
Yeah, he doesn't have an Irish mark. And if you look at, let's say, the Tide Turns is £2 higher than his Irish mark, 137. That's fine. Gordon's horses are generally, I think I have the average here. I think they're 4.5 or something higher on average, but he's not being too harsh on him. slightly strange prep, maybe, that he ran him on heavy ground. I know Andy made out the point there. Just running him on heavy ground going into the race wouldn't be ideal. He did actually travel Grand at Gorn, and that was a good race. I think we did, you can definitely say he didn't let himself down. I'd be interested if Andy knows the first winner of the Fred Winter. I'm going to get the trumpet out here because I actually backed it.
Turning into a quiz, this.
Yeah, was it Dabaroon?
Dabaroon. That is a shout.
1-0.
Nina Carberry for the one and only Paul Nolan. Yep. And so Paul Nolan trains HMS Seahorse. And it was funny when he won his maiden the last year. He sent off odds on. He still looks a bit raw in his jumping. He's obviously closely matched the tie turns, but he's by Galileo. And I just think Paul Nolan has had this race in his mind for some time. He's laid him out for the race. What I really liked the last year was when Gavin Cromwell's horse came up, probably went long odds on after jump the last. I'm speculating here. Found another gear that really I think goes favourably in terms of what he'll find up the hill at Cheltenham on better ground, being by Galileo. He didn't actually win a race for Aidan O'Brien, but he showed smart form. He was sent off even money in a handicap over a mile. They thought he was that quick enough, but he stays very well. I'm actually, funnily enough, I hate the way they've diluted Cheltenham, but I've always been a fan of the Fred Winter, maybe because of Dabaroon. But I think the juveniles this year, this is actually a very good race. And whatever we make of the hot pot in it, Andy, there's talk of Joe Chambers, the racing manager for Rich Ritchie, saying that, this horse could be a supreme horse next year if they hadn't gone down this route. The French Gaelic Warrior, who's run off, I think he's run off 129. We might have no chance running against him, but I think both of us have a strong chance of a horse running very well, and mine is 12-1.
Andy, I was going to ask you about Gaelic Warrior because, as you say, Joe Chambers there, previously been on our Cheltenham previews before. Sadly, isn't this year. Otherwise, we'll be able to ask him ourselves. But he, talks of a supreme horse. Talk of, let's see if the mark of 139 is honoured, and then is given a mark of 129 for the race. When you see that, and we're all going to be seeing Gaelic Warrior running for Powerful Connections for the first time here. Do you see that as an opportunity in terms of finding some value to go against this thing that probably has been overbet, you have to say, in the last couple of weeks? I mean, we'll see what price it goes off. Or does it make you step back and say, hold on, we don't really know what we're taking on here?
It wouldn't be in my nature to ever back a horse like that. It's one of those ones where, if you've seen it work at home, he's worked upside Vauban, and, all the sort of judges at Close Sutton are falling over themselves to take whatever price they can get. Fair enough, but it wouldn't matter what mark he's got for me. He could have 135, 136, 146. He's never running a race like this before. 20 odd juveniles flying around Cheltenham. Has he been on an undulating track before? Do we know he handles Cheltenham? There's so many questions to ask, and there's one stat as well he's got to overcome, notwithstanding the fact that Willie Mullins has never won this race. But I was looking at the stats of this race. British bred horses, since this race was formulated, are 0 from 55, and he's by Maxios, who's a UK stallion. So
you can't be worried by that, Andy, can you?
No. Isn't the tides turned? Isn't the tide turns British bred as well?
No, he's not.
I see the moon.
See the moon.
Okay. I'm not sure if he's British, but that is a crazy stat.
I mean, there's been some stats which are just not worth the paper they're written on. That probably is one of them, but I just thought I'd throw it out there anyway. It was very similar to the stat that no horse had ever won at Huntingdon before going on to win at Cheltenham, and then Shiskin and powered up the hill and made everyone look a little bit silly that laid in a big price. Where would
you run Field Door, Andy?
Sorry?
Where would you run Field Door?
I'd run him in the Triumph.
Okay.
I think based on what he did at Leopardstown, they'd be mad not to. He comes out easily second best. I think he's on par with Pied Piper on sort of time figure. So I can't believe they won't go to the Triumph with him.
Interesting.
I think they think that the new course, the longer galloping track, will probably suit him better than Leopardstown, arguably.
I think they're probably right. I think Davy's hand might have been forced a bit by trying to force it a bit Leopardstown, but we'll obviously get to that anyway.
Yeah.
We will get to that. We're going to move on now to Wednesday. Just the one race we're going to be previewing on Wednesday. It's a Champion Bumper. And a brave man, Johnny, because we've got a paid up member of the Facile Vega fan club in Andy, who is even money for the race. American Mike 11-4, Redemption Day 6-1, Mercury 10-1, James Gate 12-1, 20-1 Bar. And Johnny, which one are you looking to side with?
This is purely price based, and there's definitely a chance that Facile Vega is unbelievable. But I think this race could be a bit like when the somewhat forgotten envoy Elaine. I think he faced the now very forgotten Blue Sari, and Blue Sari, both of them well touted. Blue Sari came up, and envoy Elaine just clicked the button as he did in those days and just went on again. This could be a clash of two unbelievable horses, but American Mike, when I spoke to Gordon Elliott at the start of the season, I said, just what's your I was doing a stable tour, what's your horse for season? He said, American Mike, right? So you're trying to figure out what he achieved. But when he won at Navan the last day, this race, he won by 17 lengths. He was probably valued for winning by maybe 20, 25 lengths on the day. Now, the horse that finished second, Battling Bessie, who was a filly, she was a 6-1 shot on the day. She then went in and ran in a grade 2 at Leopardstown and was beaten a short head, albeit at 33-1. And if you also go back and look at Hemlock, who's disqualified in the race, he's run very well over hurdles since. The one worry I would have had about Facile Vega is the horse that he admittedly beat very, very easily last time was subsequently beaten when I thought he'd win readily at Naas. He was kind of beaten with no excuses. So there's just a slight concern as to, as much as there were 6 previous winners against him that day, should he be as short as he is? And they have kind of made mentions of the other horses, Redemption Day and Mercury as well, in Willie's. But I think American Mike, and I would be interested in Andy's take on his own speed figures. I think he's probably sensationally good. They seem to be saying that about him all year. And I think he will be closer to him on the day than he is right now. I think there is a star in this race, but it might be American Mike.
Just quickly before we get Andy's thoughts, Johnny, would you be backing him each way at 11-4, given the shape of the race?
Yeah, I'd have no issue with that. In general, in terms of backing 11-4, 5-2, 9-4, 2-1, would have no issue backing each way. At the same time, I mean, is sort of 1-2 massive value to finish in the first 3, and inexperienced horse going to Cheltenham. I'd probably tend to back him just win, but I'd prefer to back him win than back him without, if that makes sense, because I think Facile Vega has been priced as if he's absolutely gone by, and how can we say he's that much better than American Mike?
Andy, over to you. How can we say that Facile Vega is much better than American Mike? I mean, American Mike, you were. I remember before Facile Vega's first run, you were all over American Mike and said nothing can beat it. And then Facile Vega turned up, and you said, "Oh, maybe I was wrong."
Yeah, that's the unfortunate issue with doing podcasts pre-Christmas and having an opinion or being forced to back up statements that I make back in November. But yeah, when American Mike won at Down Royal, I said that nothing had run faster than him. I mean, he did a time figure that day at Down Royal that was eye-popping. He would have won every champion bumper based on that in the last decade off that time. So straight away I figured, this is a really good horse. So I had a few quid on him at the price he was then. But then along came Facile Vega, and he went slightly quicker, not by a huge amount. I think Johnny's absolutely spot on. The two of them are very, very, very good. They're probably the best 2 horses we've seen in this race for many, many years. But he was really good the first day. He didn't have to actually improve much to win the second time. He was slightly slower on the clock, but the day when he won the first day, I did a split screen comparison. I apologise if many viewers are tuning in to listen to this for the second time, but for those that are new to this podcast, then this is for you. But if you set that sort of video running from the where the wings are from the one going away from the stance to the winning line, you compare Facile Vega with Sir Gerhard, and there was 50 lengths difference. And obviously, I know there's 6 flights of hurdles to be taken into account that Sir Gerhard jumped. So obviously it wouldn't have been that much of a winning margin. But when you put the 2 races up and you watch them on a screen, you think, God almighty, look how far he's ahead of Sir Gerhard. I mean, it was just incredible. And look, the form of his races, of that race, has worked out well. The horse of Paul Nolan, the Joy Machine, he won. Well, he won easily in the end at Navan the next day. I think he would have won even easier. They got a clear run. I certainly take Johnny's point of view that maybe the second could have given it a slightly better boost over the weekend. Paul Nolan, who's other horse. But yeah, I think that's probably.
What a race, though, Andy! Like the two of them coming down the hill, and you can see both. Well, who's gonna go first there? It's what Cheltenham's all about, really.
Oh, it's going to be a great race. I mean, Paddy's been also talking about Redemption Day as well. I don't think he's totally should be a forgotten horse. So yeah, it's a fascinating race. I think the prices are probably wrong. I think Fassa Vega is probably too short at even money compared to what American Mike did, as also done on the numbers. But yeah, bring it on. It's going to be a great race. I think we're in for some fireworks there.
Exciting. Looking forward to the champion bumper. American Mike, the one for Johnny. On to Thursday's race, and a race that truly does belong to the Irish in recent times. As I say, no British trained winner since 2015. It's the Pertemps final. And this time last year, it was for similar connections, Johnny. We were all trying to guess where would the shunter turn up. Trained by Emmett Mullins, owned by Paul Barn, and we had plenty of entries. This time, Winter Fog is entered for the Coral Cup, for the Pertemps, for the County Hurdle, and for the Martin Pipe. And you think he's worth siding with for the Pertemps here?
Yeah, so like there are a couple, like I've one of my other horses as well is double or triple entered, so there is that proviso. Now Winter Fog, he's one of the horses who's gotten off a little bit harsher relative to his Irish mark. I think he's £7 higher in Britain. But you can't but really like the profile of this horse. He has had one start for him at Mullins, and it was in that race at Leopardstown at Christmas. Now I know the winner, Panda Boy, was very well fancied on the day. He was disappointing since. Watch the way Winter Fog travelled, and I know there was a suggestion from connections that he did take up the run a little bit earlier than ideal. I think what they'll try to do with him is hold on to him a lot later. I don't know who's going to ride him in the Pretense, but they'll be riding there late. And as you say, Paul Byrne's a friend of mine. He's been amazingly successful at procuring horses, including the shunter. This horse is an 8-year-old, but he's only actually had 5 starts. He's only had one for Emmett Mullins. The yard switch brought about an immediate dividend when he nearly landed the gamble at Leopardstown. The horse who was third in that race, strong travelling horse, who may well run in Cheltenham as well, who'd been having a very good year. To Future and Region, he travelled really well as well. But Winterfall he probably took it up a little bit too soon, but this will have been the plan for him since. Certainly Cheltenham, he's so lightly raced, and I just love for his inexperience how he travelled that day. And I still think there's a bit of juice in the price. I think wherever he goes, he will be backed.
Yeah, still a bit of juice there. Best price at the moment, 12-1 for Winter Fog. And Andy, you got one here as well to take. Not to take Winter Fog on with necessarily, but interesting to note. As I mentioned, the British have a terrible record in this race in recent times, but we've got Sporting John of Philip Hobbs's and Alaphilippe of Fergal O'Brien's right at the top of the market, which doesn't really tally with what we've seen in recent years with the handicap marks of those horses turning up here. And there's another Irish one that you think could be worth siding with.
Yeah, a lot of the press guys and punters want to get rid of this race, but I absolutely love it. It's probably one of my favourite races to bet on. Now I know the sort of key factor to finding the winner of this race, and that's basically just to look at that Leopardstown handicap year in year out. I mean, Sard de Burley, he snuck in there, didn't he, a couple of years, and Delta Work won it, and several of the others have followed suit. So basically, you just watch the video back of that Leopardstown race, and you get stuck in. Dunboyne was one of the horses that I was kind of half having a look at. I thought he was quite interesting, but
he's either left on the same mark, I think, Andy.
I think he is, yeah. Yeah. I was just really disappointed with his next run the next day when he went back to Leopardstown. I was just looking for something a little bit more than him. Kind of sort of slightly put me off Dunboyne. But yeah, look, Winter Fog's definitely on my shortlist. I'll probably split mistakes at this very stage. He's definitely one of them. I love the way he went through the race, as Johnny said. I think the better ground will suit him, and that's key to him. I just think the ground was just probably a little bit too soft for him over that stiff 3 miles. As well. Yeah, so I think the better ground at Cheltenham will definitely suit. But look, he'll be banged now, I'm sure of it. And the other one I like is the Big Galloper, who I could not believe for the life of me how he managed to win round Musselburgh last time out in the strongest run UK qualifier at Musselburgh last time out. There's been a lot of slowly run races, small tactical fields that haven't really led to a great deal form-wise. But they went, like I say, proper gallop at Musselburgh. There's some well-fancied horses in that race, like Brawson and Wackall, horse who's, I think he's unbeaten round Musselburgh. And this fella just outstayed him and galloped on all the way to the line. And I didn't notice that he got a good run under his belt at Cheltenham a couple of years ago when he finished second in a handicap. So he's been around the track before. He looks to have done quite well, to my eyes anyway, getting in there 131. He might need a few to drop out, but I think that might well be the case with a lot of doubly entered horses. So if he sneaks in down the bottom, then I'd go with the Big Galloper along with Johnny's Winter Fog.
They've had like some bad luck with Blazing Cal for the same connections, another state hurdler. But I had to laugh, Andy. after he wasn't backed at Musselburgh at all, because I was looking at Mark that day, but it was like after the race, trainer had no explanation for the improved form shown. Maybe he just didn't know.
No, he didn't know what he got. No, he didn't know what he got. But look, that was only the second time that he stepped up to 3 miles. And you look at all of his other previous runs, including that run when he was second at Cheltenham. He's been crying out for further. He very much lives up to his name, doesn't he? He looks like a bit of a giraffe. He's quite a big horse, hence the fact that I can't believe he managed to win round Musselburgh. I think Charles Burns was even caught out by that. But well, look, he managed to get him qualified with an unexpected win, let's say.
I mean, you say he wasn't well backed. Obviously, 17-2, no big gamble. But SPs before that of 100-1, 200-1, 17-2, 14s, 33-1 show the level of form that he was showing prior to that win at Musselburgh, and could obviously be very well treated if repeating the trick as Andy hopes. On then to the Mayor's Novice now. The Mayor's Novice is the next one for Andy, and prices at the moment, we like one at the top end of the market. But we have Brandy Love is 11-4. Dino Blue 3-1, Party Central 13-2, LA Bell 8-1 with Gronji, and Impervious 14-1 bar Andy. But it's Dino Blue at 3s that's taking your fancy at the moment. And for the Mayor's Novice, we talk a lot about the Supreme, the Ballymore, even the Albert Bartlett with your speed figures, but no reason as well why your numbers can't be pretty. Can reveal a great deal about the chances of these.
No, it's unlike for me to go with the horse who's just had the one run with Dino Blue, but she's actually top rated by quite some margin off the back of that Clonmel win, just the one run. But it was a spectacular performance. Remember that race distinctly. I was doing a William Hill radio shift that day, and I was just covering the races and normally do, and it just looked an ordinary. I thought, what on earth is this? The way it powered its way through the race. And when I went back and done the time, funny enough, I actually did the numbers on the day. I remember running the race back and doing it, and I actually said to the listeners that day that this horse must be some tool, because it beat Cashback. I think I won a 2.5 mile conditions race, flooring one of those Cheveley Park horses, and I think the difference in the circuit time was something like 8 seconds. It was something in that region, and the overall time figure furlong per furlong was by miles in favour of Dino Blue, and they've resisted the temptation to run her again since. So they've clearly known what they've got. They almost think, well, they don't need to run her again, and she certainly doesn't need to improve on her technique. Her jumping was unreal. The ground she was taking out of the rest of them was quite spectacular. So she definitely knows how to operate over a hurdle. And I did notice that the second and third were due to fight out a finish of a Limerick maiden hurdle the other week, when unfortunately Henry de Bromhead's horse tipped up and left Me Lighthouse clear. So that form has already been boosted, only in a small way, of course. We're not talking about graded horses, but it has at least been boosted. But I think this is a fair deal, this Dino Blue. And even though Brandy Love is respected, and I think she'd be better off going left-handed, I'm fully paid up member to that theory. I just don't think she's good enough to beat Dino Blue. I think she's a proper horse.
Johnny, any view on the Mayor's Novice?
Yeah, there was a lot of chat about her actually, in terms of, obviously Willie had so much depth. One of the horses gone out of it now. So much depth in the race. I will give a mention to Mighty Blue in this race. She's a horse that it's very interesting that she's gone back for the race again as a maiden, which is exactly what Concertista did. Now, when Concertista ran in the race and she was touched off in 2019, I think she was a big price. I had one of these kind of accumulators going on. There was a mixture of like Cheltenham, probably a race in Ireland, and some JP horse I'd got a tip for, like in Stratford or something. To make a long story short, I had all this money going on, and the last leg of it was an accumulator. So the last leg was going into the Mayor's Hurdle, and it was on Epatante, obviously, and she just had to win for me to win. And I think it was something like 16 grand or something. And Epatante absolutely flopped that day. But she was actually running against the likes of Concertista, who then went on and won the race the following year in a canter. But I backed Mighty Blue in the race last year. She was quite well backed. She travels really well. She's a very good horse in the flat. Now, she was obviously beaten in a maiden the last year. I wouldn't mind that too much. She is going back for the race. She's 20-1. So I think she could run very well. But definitely Andy's horse. She looked special the last day.
Do you think, Johnny, she wants nice ground, Mighty Blue? I know she's got a bit of soft ground in the form, but flat form would be, summer flat soft would be different to obviously Irish soft.
Absolutely, and I think that'll suit her down to ground. Like, she does actually travel very well. She's rated like rated 106 on the flat, so it's kind of mad that she hasn't won a hurdle race. And I wouldn't mind her defeat the last day. The market was a bit odd that day. They kind of came for her and then they kind of went against her. But on her flat form, she's well able to win a race like this. And I just like the fact that she's gone back again as a novice. For a horse that does have a bit of experience, and I think she'll run very well.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention Epatante, but in that green and gold in the Mayor's Novice, I was on that day too, Johnny. And I'm guessing if you were on that morning as well, given that she drifted from kind of 11 to 8 to 15 to 8 on the day, you incorporate bog into your multi, it was probably more like 30 grand. But I don't want to.
Yeah, thanks for that. I really need to be told that.
We get it all back this time. Don't you worry about that. We'll move on before Johnny leaves the call to look at the Kim Muir. And there's a horse here, Andy, that horses entered for the Kim Muir and entered for the Ultima, and you say you'll back him either way. I'll run through the market quickly. We've got Frontal Assault. This is for the Kim Muir. Frontal Assault's 5-1, and Not a Shame 11-1. Fleur 12-1, Smoking Gun and Deal Kerr and Fakir Delay or 14-1, as is Omar Moretti. And the horse that you want to talk about now was Mr. Fog Patches. A bit of blue on oddschecker, as short as 10-1 in places, but still a bit of 14s around.
Yeah, I'm not sure at time of recording which race this horse will end up running in, and I don't really know which is the target out of the two. I see him entered up in the Ultima. I think he's number 51 in the Ultima, a lot higher up because it's a weaker race, isn't it? The Kim Muir, I think he's 20 odd. But he's just a horse I really like. He's laid his heart on the line in pretty much every stamina test available in the last 12 months. Obviously, he was third in the Scottish National as a fairly inexperienced horse. I think he's only a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and he's done absolutely nothing but improve and get better in the better races as time's gone on. I thought it was an incredible run in the Cork race early in the season. I think he was last going out to the final circuit in Grand, and he wouldn't have liked, and he managed to run on to finish third behind Brayside. He ran well in the Troy Town again behind Runbar Fred, who was obviously very well handicapped. And he just couldn't lay a glove on Commodore when he went to Cheltenham pre-Christmas. But again, it was another solid run, proving that he handles Cheltenham. And that Thyestes chase the other week was a really, really big number. I put up Death Duty the other day and Cocoa Beach out of that race. I was that confident that one of those two would run well, and they finished first and third, I think, respectively in that Grand National Trial. So I already know that form is as good as what the numbers suggest. And if you watch Mr. Fog Patches as well, he went around all the way around the inside on the swamp, something that you literally couldn't do. I think a lot of horses went around the inner, like Gascaria 10 and Brayside, literally fell out the back of the TV. He was the only one who actually kept up with them going around the inside. So I upgraded that performance, and he's actually come out of that race only £2 higher. Certainly with regards to the Irish handicap, I think he's a bit high now over here. What is he, 140? So he's £4 higher if you're a weights and measures man. But I just can't envisage him not running well just because he always does. And as I said, I don't really know which race he'll end up running in. I think he probably might be better off in the Ultima for lightweight because he's not an overly big horse. So if a lot drop out, I think it's 24 maximum fielders in the Ultima, and there's every chance that they will. If he snuck in, right down the foot, then he would be a serious contender in that. But either way, good amateur on in the Kim Muir. If he didn't make the Ultima, I'd be more than happy to row in with him again. So I think non-runner no bet in both races. You're bound to get a good run for your money. Obviously, you won't lose it if he doesn't run in the other race.
Yeah, as I say, you can see on the oddschecker grids which firms are non-runner no bet. Most are now, but make sure you do check before you have your bets. Otherwise, if doesn't, especially if you're backing one horse in two races, you will lose your money on the one where they don't turn up. Johnny, any view on the Ultima or the Kim Muir, or should we move on to Friday?
Yeah, Pat Fahey's horse is 2 from 30 as well, and even though he's not ungenuine, so it would be a hell of a feat. I think he might be 1 from 12 over fences, but as you say, he's running some very good races. Like Frontal Assault he's kind of obvious in the Kim Muir as much as his price is kind of reflects that now. That run behind Fleur is very good. Imagine he'll have Jamie Codd in the plate. He's a graded winner over hurdles. He's very lightly raced, but it's a tough race. I keep an eye out in Grand Parody as well. I think he's, as much as he's frustrating, I think he's a lot of ability, but the Kim Muir isn't one that I was massively concentrating on.
Let's go move on to the Friday then, and the opener on Friday is the Triumph, and it feels like this is a Cheltenham with plenty of big matches over the course of the week, and this certainly, no disrespect to the others who of course play their part, feels like a big tussle, especially a tussle, a war of words in the last couple of weeks as well. Vauban is the 15-8 favourite ahead of Pied Piper at 5-2. Fidor is 7-1, Porticello 10s, Night Salute 12s, Iker Allen, Il était de temps, both 14-1, 16-1 bar, and a lot of conversation about the Vauban Pied Piper form. Vauban 15-8 at the top end of the market at the moment, Johnny, and you agree with that?
Okay, this is quite simple, and it was a bit like American Mike. I think this is a 2-horse race, and Andy could clarify maybe the British hopes. I'd imagine our juveniles are better. I cannot. I can't. What do you think, Andy?
Oh no, absolutely spot on. They're like years ahead of the UK horses. So
I fancied Fieldor at Leopardstown, and there was a kind of, you were watching the race, and Davy Russell was unusually kind of I wouldn't say forceful. He was kind of trying to push the race such that it didn't become a sprint. And Vauban, despite the fact that he was leaning right at his hurdles, and again was a bit keen, first time tongue tie, he absolutely left him for dead. Now this track might suit him a bit better, and it's probably more of a gallop in nature. But Vauban went into that race with very little experience. Obviously, that Pied Piper race, and the turn of foot he showed for me was absolutely sensational. Now he and Pied Piper, they're both very good flat horses who've taken to hurdling. Pied Piper is obviously taken to Cheltenham, which is a slight concern for Vauban because he can go right at his hurdles. They're obviously clashing again. Just found it interesting that Patrick Mullins simply said Vauban is better than the Pied Piper. I'm not really sure why he said that, but he said that in a Q&A during the week. For me, it's a 2-horse race. I'm not for certain he's going to beat him, but I think there's enough juice in his price. I think he's 15-8 at the moment. The turn of foot he showed the last year was sensational. I can't see how Fieldor beats him, and unless Iker Allen, who was well beaten at Leopardstown, what was interesting was he was really well backed on Saturday. Like, his maiden hurdle form looked reasonable, and he had run well in the Grade 1, but he was beaten about 10 lengths. He didn't run his race. He was backed as if defeat was out of the question Saturday, and he absolutely bolted up. Andy's obviously put forward the tie turns as well for the Fred Winter. It just looked a very strong race. This horse, despite still doing stuff wrong, was miles better than them, and I think he could go off odds on in this Triumph.
Odds on, Andy. I know you're a big fan of Vauban. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I'm a massive fan of Vauban. This has got the hallmarks of being an O'Connor Mark II, and that's paying also the ultimate respect to Pied Piper, because I don't think he's any muppet, as we saw when he won at Cheltenham. But I think Vauban probably would have beaten him, wouldn't he, Johnny, at Punchestown, had he not ran around and obviously got messed around at the last. He had to check his run, and then he was obviously closing in on Pied Piper. I think he was very much the superior horse that day, and what they've done subsequently, I think, has proven that is very much the case. Even allowing with the fact Pied Piper's won by 10 wickets or more at Cheltenham, and he's got the Cheltenham experience.
The feeling as well, Andy. They thought that Fieldor was better than Pied Piper. I'm virtually certain they did.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think he almost came over as a bit of a foot soldier, didn't he, Pied Piper, just to kind of like test the water with the English horses, and they probably come away thinking, oh, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, the way that Vauban went by Fieldor at Leopardstown was a sight to behold. And I don't know if you remember that race, but there was like a roving inside camera, wasn't it, that went with them from the home turn to the last. You could just see him cruising up, and Davey was flat to the boards on Fieldor. He probably couldn't get his breath, could he? That this thing had gone by him, and then he just went further clear in the running. But so the time figure of that win there would have won the Triumph Hurdle for the last decade. There's only been O'Connor who's run quicker going into the festival, certainly on the numbers that we collect. So it'll take a very, very good horse to beat Vauban. If he stays on his feet and he doesn't do anything wrong, then he ought to win quite comfortably, I'd suggest.
Johnny reckons odds on SP. Andy, what do you think the SP will be?
Hard to think that a horse will be odds on in a race like that, particularly if obviously Pied Piper and Fieldor both go there as well. There's an argument to say that Fieldor is, like I say, he's also an each way bet for nothing if you didn't want to take short odds about Vauban. But it's hard to say anything beyond that. The thing is with the UK horses, I think Gary Moore's got at least one or two of them. They all want really, really heavy ground or soft ground. Porticello's massively ground dependent. He got done for a turn of foot at good Doncaster on good ground. Night Salute, admirable horse though he is. he's just not in the, he's not in the same ballpark as the Irish horses. And the level of form of the UK horse has been poor. Yeah, I must have been done about 10 podcasts, and I think I've said it every time, haven't I, George, that we haven't got anything fit enough to lace the boots of the Irish horses, and they finally turned up in that spring juvenile, and obviously Pied Piper. So yeah, the numbers tell me that the Irish have got a big advantage, and I expect that to be played out on the day.
The Piper as well and Vauban, in fairness, in terms of what they've done on the flat in their respective, and I'm I'm looking at this kind of on paper going into their careers. They were very good horses who have taken to Ireland, so they tick so many boxes. Sometimes you get the likes of O'Connor, who was a decent flat horse and he was transformed, but these horses had shown serious pace on the flat. And if Pied Piper was the one thing you would say about his earlier clash with Vauban, he was keen that day. He's getting better. Vauban were tongue tied the first time the last day, and he still did stuff wrong. So I think the two of them are very exciting, and I think it'll be a bit like the bumper, Elliot versus Mullins in a race to sabre.
Yeah, another one, Elliot versus Mullins, and we'll move on to a race in the Martin Pipe, where I'm sure there'll be quite a lot of Elliot versus Mullins at the top end of the market. At least there is now. Langadan is the fly in the ointment there, 5-1 for Dan Skelton, joint favourite with State Man at 5-1, Manila Kroon 9-1, Adamantly Chosen 10-1, Chemical Energy 10s, Good Risk at all 11s, and then the one that you fancy here, for Gordon Elliott, Johnny. We've got Hollow Games at 11-1, entered for the Ballymore and the Albert Bartlett as well, but with a mark here possibly of 143.
Yeah, so I spoke to Noel Moran actually today, and he just, in fairness, he said, like, we're not really sure 100%, but the mark definitely gives him a chance. You mentioned State Man there. I think this goes back to the start of this conversation in terms of why the Irish are doing so well. State Man, with another yard, will be running in one of the grade ones, quite simply. So might Hollow Games. But the likes of Gordon and Willie have so many novices that they quite reasonably want to split them up. And Hollow Games, for me, I'm taking a bit of a chance on him here, but I think he has a lot of ability. That race, obviously, at Leopardstown, will be interesting to see what role it plays in the two novice races, including the Albert Bartlett. But by this time, we'll have a fair idea of the value of that form. He travelled really well into the straight. His form is very solid. That run, obviously, at Naas and the Lawlers, I think Ginto's a very good horse. Hollow Games, to me, the way that they've spoken about him, they are expecting more from him. I think a truly run race will definitely help him. There was a race dictated by the winner, obviously, the last day at Leopardstown, Elek, and he just wasn't able to quite go with him. He looked like he was going to finish second, then he faded a bit. But he's a fine big horse, should be improving with experience. I'd like if they tried to exploit this mark in the Martin Pipe, obviously a race that Gordon likes to win. He won it a couple of times in recent years. I'm not sure he'd be quite good enough to win one of the novice races, but I think there's enough juice in his price. And obviously you want a likely race horse going into a race like this. For me, he's interesting. I think he'll run a very big race.
Andy, any views on this, the closer of the festival?
Yeah, I'm always looking towards the Irish horses in this race. I think history dictates that, particularly from yards that have won it before. The Gordon Elliott's, the Willie Mullins of of that ilk. Massive respect to Hollow Games if he does run. I mean, he's obviously well treated. He's a classic plot, isn't he? Well, not plot, but he's a classic trends horse, isn't he? Having run in a grade 2 grade 1s, very similar to sort of Galopin de Champ. Your Don Polies. The Champ, was it Champ de Champ won it many years ago? Was that a horse of Willie's that for the Gigginstown stable? I can't remember his name now. I think he went over fences and he ended up being a very good horse, didn't he?
Yeah, he was also by Sir Deschamps.
Sir Deschamps, that's the one. Yeah, Sir Deschamps. So those are the kind of horses traditionally that win this race. I'd say Banbridge is worth a look further down the list. Not sure whether he definitely goes there.
But actually, was disappointing.
Yeah, he didn't get the clearest of runs through that day. He went around the inside, he got squeezed out 2 out, and then stayed on over 2 miles. But they stepped him up last time out, and he won well at St Navan. Good time figure. And it's interesting that Joseph O'Brien has won this race before with a horse, JP's, a couple of years ago. This is his only entry. I mean, not sure how many he could have entered in this race, but that's his only one this season. He's got 137, so he might be worth a look at a bigger price.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, your column's normally out there. Is it night before racing during the festival?
That's the plan. Yeah, I've had a quick chat with the boys. I think they want it as soon as possible, really. But luckily this year I've managed to get myself some press accreditation, and I can actually do my work in the requisite box or a place where I should be doing it, rather than
You were in for a treat, Andy. You in no better media room in the world you look better after than at Cheltenham. The food, the drink, coffee. I'm telling you, you won't want to leave.
There's normally a very good Irish stew at some time during the week, which is always worth getting into.
The last 3 or 4 years, I've done it in a corporate box. You can imagine, like with the busyness of that, people asking you questions, you're typing away. You just never can get your work done. So hopefully, I'll get no interruptions.
Well, Andy, this is the first year in 4, not including last year, where I'm going as a punter rather than working, and I'm very happy to have handed over my press accreditation to you for oddschecker this year. I think you deserve it more than me. Thank you very much to both Andy and to Johnny for sharing their thoughts on the Irish angles at this year's Cheltenham Festival. Thank you very much to 888 Sport as well for sponsoring the podcast, and 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty, as ever, for sharing his wisdom with us. Do download the oddschecker app now for the best prices, bookie offers, free bets. Place terms going to be important for the festival. No bet information as well. And of course, some of the best tipsters in the game, including Andy Holding. Thank you both very much for your insight. Do keep an eye on the YouTube channel, the oddschecker YouTube channel as well, where you'll find plenty of previews. Next week, we'll be doing our usual day-by-day previews. Going to be a long old day filming out, Andy. I hope you're looking forward to it. But yeah, look out. We'll find it all there. You can see our stable tour as well with Neil Mulholland. That's out a day in the life of Neil Mulholland, and plenty else there too. So do check that out. You can find the podcast on any podcast platform as well. Please ensure you enjoy the racing, and as ever with all of these tips, ensure that you are gambling responsibly.